So let's finish off this section with another example. The examples are really important because they allow us to actually get our hands dirty and to do the thing, to actually go through some requirements. And that's very helpful because a lot of this information can kind of go in one ear and out the other. But if you actually do an example, then you can really cement that in your mind. And whenever something comes up, you'll remember maybe not every bit of the requirements and the definitions between the two, but you'll remember enough that you'll either be able to do an intelligent Google search for it, or you'll be able to do an outline and then look up maybe some of the other things that you should include in your requirements documentation. So with this example, what we're going to do is we are basically just going to take like a real world scenario and just work through it. With these examples, remember, we're not trying to go 100% here. We're not trying to think of every conceivable possibility. In the real world, you might, but that usually takes weeks to do. So in these things, we're just trying to get out the 80%. We're trying to knock out, the 80% of the requirements that might go into this. And then, if you really want to, you can sit down later and do the rest of it, or we can just move on and sort of build on it as we go forward. So what we have is we have an already built chess app. So let's say that we have a phone and we've been tasked with an app, basically chess. So, chess, the game of chess. If you don't know what chess is, come up with any game that you do know. And so we have a game app, and we want to monetize this app to start making money. So that's our objective, is to take this app, this whatever it is, however it works. Maybe it's an online app, maybe it's really anything. We're going to take this game and we're going to start monetizing it. So we need to think about what are the steps we should take, how should we define the problem, and what will benefit both the client and the users. And with all of this, we can use that world model again. Remember, we're going to look for the world, so the assumptions. We're going to look for the requirements, so what exactly is needed from this app. And then we're going to look for the specifications. So what are some of the technical details of how we want to implement this app? What are some of the limitations, the constraints that we have to follow? Let's say that the previous app is built in Java, and the client wants to keep it that way. So that's one of the constraints that I can give you as well. Anyway, it would be very beneficial for you to pause the video and just sort of go through these three right here. And if you notice, we didn't talk about how to monetize the app. So come up with something. Come up with an idea about how you might monetize it. Maybe there aren't ads in it and you want to add ads. Maybe your idea of this app is it already has ads and you want to add some subscription model. Or maybe you want to create a paid version. What would go in the paid version? Come up with an idea about an app and then how you might advance that app, and then kind of come up with the assumptions, the requirements, and the specifications on that. And again, it's an exercise. Just be creative, have a little bit of fun with it, maybe spend 5 minutes on it, and then come on back and you can see the way that I went with it, and we can compare, see the differences about how this, and you'll also see there's a bunch of different ways we can do all of this stuff. So pause the video, do that, and be right back. Alrighty, so I hope you did it, because I think that doing it by yourself and then seeing it again is going to be a great way to cement this information into your head. So the first thing I went over was the world assumptions, the things that we assume about this app. The assumptions are important because it allows us to define the requirements. With the assumptions, we're then able to figure out, we don't have to define, silly requirements like phones exist or something like that, or we're going to need to create a phone that can support apps. With assumptions, we assume the world is a certain way, and it allows us to sort of just put those things in a box somewhere else and actually work on the things that'll help us. So in this situation, we have that there is a way to pay on smartphones. There has to be some financial servicing on smartphones for us to be able to do these transactions. There are ways to make money from an app. There has to be some viable marketing technique out there to make money from an app. If these two don't exist, then we're going to have to invent all of that ourselves, and this task suddenly gets really, really large, because now our requirements is going to have to detail how, what the market is like, what the potential risks are, things like that. But if we can assume that both of these things exist, then we just have to think of, okay, what are the best ways to do it then? The app is extendable. Maybe the code base is so bad that there's no way we can extend the app to something else. So we're going to assume that it's extendable. Otherwise, this project is just going to, halt in the water. It's not going to go anywhere. There will be an ability to contact the internet and the financial institution. So the phone has internet capabilities. Again, we don't need to define a new way for phones to connect to the internet. We're just going to assume it has internet capabilities. The transaction can be made secure enough. We're going to just assume that there is some way to secure transactions. People are doing it all over the place with different transactions. So there's probably a way out there to make them secure. The phone will have processing power to handle the request. We are hoping that these requests are going to be low end and that the processing power will be there. If they're not, then we'd have to wait for new technology. Different currencies will be able to be accepted. We have a worldwide app, so maybe we're hoping that there's going to be currencies from all over the world that'll be able to be transferred somehow. Maybe, for example, let's say the app market only accepted US dollars. That would change our approach a ton. But if we assume that there's a way to accept currency from around the world, then we don't even have to think about that. Hopefully the market will do it itself. And then it's legal to accept payment over a phone. This is important because maybe there's some country where it's not legal to accept payment without them being in person or something like that. So we need to understand the laws so we don't get into legal trouble. We need to understand that whatever we're doing is a legal process, that we don't need to get lawyers involved, that we don't need to change laws or fill out some forms to get it legal. So that's an important one to assume and something that you should think about with your requirements just in case. For example, if you're thinking about collecting data, maybe you need to make sure that there's a privacy policy. Maybe that needs to go into your requirements, is that it's legal with a privacy policy. So now you have to put in that to the requirements so we know. So then we have our world assumptions. Next step is the requirements. So I just went through things that I thought would work. I thought of an app that had ads already, and then a subscription model would remove the ads, something very, very simple. So the pro feature will remove ads for the user. I'm defining what exactly our pro feature is going to do. It's going to do something simple. It's going to just remove ads. So that's going to be our pro feature right there. So the next step is that the feature must accept payment from a user. This is pretty important. If it doesn't accept payment from a user, then there's no way we can actually charge them, where there's no way we get money. Therefore, we shouldn't be giving the user anything. The feature must provide pro features upon successful transaction. We could accept the person's money and not do anything in the app. Then our app's probably going to get shut down in the app store. So we must be able to provide the pro features upon a successful, and that's important, a successful transaction. We need to check whether it's successful or not successful. The feature must complete transactions in a secure manner. Again, we don't want data breaches. That's bad for really everyone. That's bad because it allows other people to get exploited, and it's bad because it makes us look bad. The feature will revoke pro features once a subscription becomes invalid. So if someone stops paying, we should remove the features. Otherwise, someone will just do it the first time and then just never pay again and still get all the pro features. The feature will provide a cancel button within the app. That's not something that you have to do. Maybe nowadays in the app stores, it's starting to become something you have to do. But maybe with our app, we value trust in our company. So we're going to have that cancel button within the app that'll send a signal that cancels the subscription for all future months. The feature will extend off existing code base. We don't want to redesign this app, so we're going to try to extend it off the current code base. The feature mustn't add more than 5 megabytes to the overall download size. Maybe that's something that the overarching boss said, or maybe it's something that the client said, that our app is already really large and people are complaining about it, so it cannot be more than 5 megabytes. Something that could happen, so I threw it in there. And the feature must complete the transaction in a timely fashion. We don't want it to be a very, very slow feature, so we have this idea that it should be completed in a timely fashion. And then with their specifications, we can actually sort of go into that a little bit more in depth. So now we have the world assumptions, we have the requirements, and now we have the specifications. The feature will be coded in Java with the existing app's language. Remember what we talked about is that the app was coded in Java. So that's a specification, that's a technology we need to use, is the existing app's language. Maybe we don't have to specify Java in the specification. We can just say the existing app's language. But I like to be sort of blunt and really, really transparent in these sort of documents. The feature will use the Android Play Store for its transactions. This is something that there's a bunch of different ways that you can accept payment. You could, like, for example, implement something called Stripe, which is a technology that accepts payments. It's a transaction software. But for this situation, what we want to do is we want to use the Android Play Store to do all of the transactions. And if we wanted to do this app in maybe iOS as well, we'd use the Apple Store there. The feature will check for active subscription daily using Google's provided API. This is very technical, but something that is important, something that the developers need to know is how often do we want to check to see if a subscription is still valid. We're saying that we're going to be using the Google's API to check daily. If the subscription is valid, don't do anything. If it's invalid, take away the privileges or maybe put a grace period, something like that. The feature will turn off AdMob once the subscription key becomes valid. AdMob is a way of advertising inside of your apps. It might be moving to some new technology by the time you're watching this. Maybe this is a technology that's sort of defunct, that no one uses anymore. But that's okay. All I'm saying is that we have this technology in our app, and we're saying that once the subscription key becomes valid, we remove that technology from the app so that the user has those pro features. And then this is that last one, that one down here, in a timely fashion. Let's say that for some reason we have a timer that it must be able to be completed in 500 milliseconds once you click the OK button. Again, maybe this is passed down from the client, or maybe it's just something that your company likes to do. They have this sort of idea of fastness and they want to define it. So in this situation, we have the requirement that it should be timely, and in the specifications, we sort of give the exactness of that. And this, like I said, it's not a 100% example here, but imagine if you had just this document to go off of, and someone handed you this document and said, I want you to code this. You suddenly have a very strong direction of what you want to do. And you also now have the ability to ask questions. They defined maybe 85%, and maybe you come into a situation where you're like, there's nothing in here. And now you can actually ask the appropriate questions to your client or to your business of, hey, what color should the buttons be, or something like that. That wasn't defined anywhere in here. Is that something I should choose? Is that something you guys want to choose, etc.? So coming up with this requirements document, it's a great way, a great foundation to build software. Next, we're going to be going into the design phase. So once we get all this, it's time to actually get down a little bit into the nitty gritty and start going over how exactly we want to build whatever piece of software we're trying to build.